Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the A to Z Sports post-game live, reacting to Notre Dame's 49-10 victory over the Navy midshipmen in Notre Dame Stadium in a snow game of all things. So, how much fun was that? Seeing the rain early on in the game turning into snow down the stretch of the season, down stretch of the game, I should say. It was really fun, really cool, and we're going to react to everything that we saw offensively, defensively. Obviously, a lot of good, some questions, some indifference. We're going to talk about it all here. If it's your first time with us, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. If you're live with us on Facebook, you can hit that like button as well. Make sure you are on the Notre Dame A to Z Sports page and for all the updated content, everything like that. And then if you're live on my Twitter, thank you for being on the Twitter, but come over to YouTube. Seriously, all you have to do is go into YouTube, Notre Dame A to Z Sports, search it in the search bar, come live, because although I appreciate the followers I have on Twitter and all that type of stuff, it's much easier to have the conversation in here. I always see people filing in, which I love to see here. Because to be honest with y'all, folks, even though Notre Dame and Navy are rivals, I didn't expect a ton of a huge amount of people coming into the chat tonight because, hey, it's Navy. Notre Dame should beat Navy, obviously, right? But we are here, and we're actually got a lot of questions. Todd Blackledge. Can Todd Blackledge never get involved in a Notre Dame broadcast again? Yeah, I actually was I had this one on mute, folks. I'm not usually a mute the TV type of guy, but I did mute this one just because I knew that there would be probably a little bit of Notre Dame bias kind of going against, and obviously not bias for, bias against. But I want to talk about the 49-10 victory. Obviously, Notre Dame moves to now 7-2 on the season. A lot of good, especially in the second half, because I thought in the first half you started a little bit slow again, not offensively. Obviously, you got off to a pretty fast start as far as the deep pass and scoring early, but defensively, you missed a lot of tackles, and we'll talk about that more specifically. But I really think in the second half, you just took control early there in the third quarter. That was when you just kind of put your foot on their throat and you didn't let them come up. So if you haven't been with us before in the channel on these post-game lives, we've been doing now for like 3 to 4 weeks. I want you guys to put as much commentary in the chat as you possibly want. I would love to bring up comments. I love to talk to you directly because ultimately it would be really boring if I just sat here for 30 minutes and talked to myself the whole time. In a previous life, I was a teacher, and in a previous life, I taught during COVID when I could not see anyone on screen because they would all turn their cameras off, and you would talk to nobody for an hour, and it was horrible. So I want to talk to people in this chat. Maybe eventually we'll turn it into a live show in terms of getting call-ins. I don't know if that'll be a thing on the horizon, but yes, I think that's something that we may have to do. And Irish Gordy Knott says, oh my God, it's really easy to switch over to YouTube. Absolutely. And it's so much easier too, because what happens is, and not to like belabor the point of getting to this game, but some people comment on Facebook, some people comment on YouTube, and then some people comment on Twitter at times. And the problem is that I'll be talking to someone on Facebook, for instance, but the YouTubers, the people that are in the YouTube, can't see what the Facebookers are saying. And it might be vice versa for the Facebookers. Maybe they don't see the YouTube comments, or maybe they do. I don't 100% know actually how it works. I'm just the guy behind on the screen, not guy behind the screen. But let's talk about the game. First and foremost, let's start off with a big picture conversation. And again, folks, put your comments into the chat here. 49-10 victory. Obviously, just from a pure box score perspective, it looks very good for the Irish. Notre Dame was able to throw for 253 yards, 3 touchdowns as a team. They were able to rush for 249 yards and 4 touchdowns, 6.6 yards per carry on the game. That's their offensive output. On the defensive side of the football, you held Navy, who was a very good rushing offense, obviously being a triple option attack. You held them to 206 yards, which I know sounds like a lot, but when you consider the fact that they ran the ball 45 times, that does show a lot, obviously, right? 4.6 yards a carry is not an impressive number, but we'll talk about some Notre Dame lapses in tackling in the open field here at some point as well. But defensively, you also only allowed them to complete 3 of 10 passes for 22 yards. And obviously, you found out a little bit before kickoff, it was reported by like Pete Thamel and a couple other people that they were without their starting quarterback Blake Horvath, and Braxton Woodson had to take over. And Braxton Woodson actually did some good stuff, especially on the ground, obviously, but not much of a thrower of the football. They had a drop or two as well. Eli Heidenreich, who I think is a really good player for Navy, had a drop in this football game as well. So let's talk about big picture. My big picture is you're 7-2. You've won 7 straight football games. You are in the stretch of your season where you should win the last 4 games after this one with relative ease. Or actually, sorry, last 3 games after this game, 4 including today. And that's a good place to be in terms of there's going to be a lot of teams contending for a college football playoff berth. And Notre Dame is ranked number 10 right now, that are going to have to play a really tough schedule down the stretch to make the playoffs. So that is trying to win their conference or trying to be one of those at-large bids. Like, there's a lot of football that's going to come on and a lot of chaos. So Notre Dame needs to do their best to control the chaos because there's no team down the stretch here. I know Pitt's a tough team and Pitt will give them a challenge in some regard, but there is no team from here to the end of the season that Notre Dame should lose to, just flat out. The only question is, how dominant of performances are you going to put up against the lesser opponents that are on the remaining schedule here? And a 39-point victory looks very good on paper. Now, when we pull back the curtain, there are things, as always, that need to improve. They have to. We'll get more into the micro view of offense, defense, and special teams as we work through those units individually. But overall, 39-point victory, home game, snow game. It was a lot of fun, man. And these types of games was a lot of fun, too, because you got to see guys like Kenny Minchie go out there and make some plays at quarterback. You got to see Aeneas Williams have a long touchdown run and make some plays. You got to see Jabron Payne. You got to see Cam Williams force a pass interference call in the end zone during this game. So it was great to see some of the other guys involved in this game. And that only is going to happen when you have this type of performance where you're up by as much as you were up. And it was great to see some of those guys kind of get into the football game. So from a macro view, good win. It was a good win. Wasn't perfect, but a 39-point victory is a 39-point victory, especially when you were playing a team in Navy that was 7-1 coming into the game. Yes, they're in the American Athletic Conference. It's not the best conference of the world. They are a G5 team, not a Power 4 team. But regardless, you took care of business and you showed a lot of progress in some areas. Now let's talk about, and actually I want to pull up a few chats here. I want to put a few chats as we kind of. So a couple interesting ones. We had Irish Gordy 9 who said Blake Horvath would have been worse in my opinion. I'm curious. IGK, can you put into the chat why you believe that? Because I think it's an interesting conversation. I would just love to hear your thought process on it. And when we get to the defense side of football, I would actually love to talk about that comment. That was very interesting there. We had Holiday every day, 550. Need to go out and play well. Next week should really roll the last 2 weeks. I agree. I think that if you have a good performance against Pitt specifically, then you have the opportunity to just kind of coast. And I know it doesn't sound great to say that, but like, we've seen Syracuse play. We've seen Stanford play. Stanford's a tough team. Like, they'll scrap for a bit, but you're more talented than them, so you'll eventually will roll them more than likely. We had Omar Olson who just said Chris Ash actually made a nearly perfect defensive adjustment for the second half. Again, he's starting to win me over. Same position Golden was in his first year. We're going to talk about that as well when we get to the defensive side. Omar, thank you for that comment. I really appreciate it. Michael Parks said 0 flags. That's Notre Dame, especially in this stretch, it's about not beating yourselves. And we're talking about like this self-inflicting stuff, right? The penalties, not converting on short yardage situations. A lot of that stuff was not present tonight, which is a really good thing to see. And we had Janice that had said kind of what we talked about earlier. Pittsburgh is going to be a challenge, but I believe in the Irish. Absolutely. It's going to be a challenge, no doubt, especially with that freshman quarterback they have. I don't even know necessarily if he's a great player, but the team believes right now, right? And anytime a team believes, they are dangerous. I 100% agree. It is a challenge for sure. Offensively, let's talk about it. As I kind of mentioned some of the numbers, CJ Carr, 13 of 16, 218 yards, 3 touchdowns. Kenny Minchie, 3 for 4 passing. That one incomplete pass was Should have been a touchdown to Jabron Payne. The Jabron Payne dropped to the middle of the field. It seemed like a little angle route, but couldn't really see from the TV copy too well. Checked out the all 22. Jeremiah Love, 13 carries, 94 yards, 2 touchdowns. Aeneas Williams, 72 yards on 5 carries and a touchdown, 14.4 yards per carry. As a team, 249 yards rushing, 6.6 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns. And I want to start there for a second. Louisville lost. Christopher just put into the chat there. And Steve Splenda just wanted to pull up this chat. He said, it's honestly hard to take things away from a baby matchup. Navy is such a unique style. I'm just happy we dominated like we should have. Well, and Steve, I think that's mostly the takeaway you should. I don't like the term like baby matchup, but like you're totally fine to use it. But I mean, the last point there, though, is key. You did to them what you should have done to them, right? You dominated them and did not let them hang around and become annoying in the fourth quarter. You put your foot on the throat, pardon, this analogy, and you didn't let up, right? You didn't let him back up for air. So I think that you said it perfectly. You did exactly what you should have done to this team. Oh, Navy team. Sorry, Steve. Gotcha. Totally understood. So offensively, I want to talk about that rushing performance first, because I'm going to say something slightly controversial here. And I want to see if other people think it's controversial or not. 249 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns as a team, 6.6 yards per carry. Again, Aeneas Williams averaged 14.4, which kind of skews that number a good bit there. Just obviously his 54-yard touchdown run skewed some of those rushing stats. Jeremiah Love made one of the best heads-up plays I've seen in a Notre Dame uniform in some time, when he was just kind of rolled over a body and was able to kind of keep his feet balanced. And then, but the crazy part about that was not the freakness of him staying up. It was the acceleration that Jeremiah Love hit after the fact, folks. I really am I marvel at that dude all the time, because it's it took him 2 steps to get back up to top speed, which is just wild, man. Absolutely wild. And it's not a gaudy stat line. Again, 13 for 94, 2 touchdowns, 7.2 carries, a really nice number. He had 1 catch for 27 yards. We just had Dan B, who just asked, Love got a good shot at the Heisman. I mean, Dan, to be honest, and you blew him out, so you weren't going to get an opportunity to do this, but you would have kind of hoped that maybe he would have had a few more opportunities in this game, and he would have had a couple maybe longer touchdown runs as well to add on to it. This was a game that if Jeremiah Love has a serious opportunity to be in New York for the Heisman Trophy ceremony, obviously not win it, but be there, I think that this is a game where you probably needed to go for a $180, 200 yards and maybe 3 touchdowns. You know what I mean? And so he played very well for what was given in front of him, but I don't know if he's going to be able to keep that pace. I hope he does. I would love to see him in New York, but I'm just not sure if that's going to happen. And Steve, this comment right here is leading me to my I guess, I don't even know if it's a hot take, because I think most people will agree with it, but some people call me negative and whatever. We'll call it. But Steve said, great play by Love, but if we're being honest, the run blocking wasn't very impressive again. And 100%. And Toby added in tough to do when they load the box. And while that's fair, while it's very fair, Toby, very, very fair, I thought the run blocking wasn't very good today. And early on, especially, I think that they were trying to get that extra hat in the box, which is why you saw that deep play to Malachi Fields early in the game, and you saw KK Smith get open for a long touchdown as well. I think that they were, and I put within the first couple plays, I was all right, Navy's going to force you to pass the football. And they had a changeup. And CJ Carr made a lot of nice throws, and he had that long early completion to Malachi Fields, and things start loosening up a little bit. But I agree 100% that the offensive line was not good run blocking tonight. And I would say they were kind of poor run blocking tonight. The running backs had to make a lot out of nothing at times. They just had to, right? And so that 249 on the ground, it is 100% skewed. I agree 100%. I will say this, though. I thought the pass blocking was good. I think the pass blocking has been good mostly for a few games, which is kind of weird to say. But, I mean, the only pressure that they really got on CJ tonight was kind of overload blitzes and stuff like that, where it's just they have more guys than you have guys, right? So I really do think that the pass blocking has improved tremendously for the offensive line, but the run blocking has not been great. And luckily, again, you got a freak show like Jeremiah Love that can make something happen when things aren't perfect. But again, like when you get into the playoffs, if Notre Dame is able to get into the playoffs, and I think they will get into the playoffs as things currently stand today, when they get into the playoffs, when you're going against a better team, against a better defense, and we saw it to a degree the first couple games of the year, while Jeremiah Love might be Superman, he's also not indestructible, right? Like he can't make every play by himself. That's just not how this thing works. And the offensive line does need to improve run blocking. And to a degree, it will, as long as Billy Schrauth gets back healthy in a couple games, in a couple weeks, in theory. But if there's a setback of any sorts to Billy Schrauth, and this is not a Sullivan Absher thing, I think that this is just a offensive line not gelling well together because they've had a couple injuries in the run game. I really do think that this is a tough. It's going to be something to watch. Is kind of just the best way I'm going to phrase this thing. I think that you have the makings of a good offensive line, but anytime you affect cohesion, because I don't think it's not, again, I don't think this is necessarily a Sullivan Absher isn't good or this player isn't good. Anytime you have an offensive line which is about cohesiveness and blocking as one, anytime you have multiple injuries up front, we saw it last year to a degree as well, communication is going to suffer. The offensive line just consistency is going to suffer because you're playing next to guys that you haven't played next to before. Like this is a thing where Sullivan Absher's been a backup offensive lineman at multiple spots, but he's been working with the second team consistently, other than in the preseason when he was working with the ones trying to fight it out with Gerby Lambert. But how many reps conceivably has he had next to Anthony Knapp and Joe Otting, right? Because Joe Otting's also a guy that came in for an injury as well. So when you ask yourself, like, it's not just the fact of, like, let's say just hypothetically that Ashton Craig never got hurt. Billy gets hurt the way he does. Sullivan has to go in for him. Sullivan now is working next to a center and a tackle who have played a ton of football, and he's the one guy that needs to figure it out on the fly. But those guys have played next to each other. In this situation, Anthony Knapp hasn't played much next to Joe Otting, right? As far as like being on the same offensive line. So you are trying to throw a couple new cogs into a machine, into a group. And I just think that you're seeing some growing pains. Now, I think that they can figure it out down the stretch. And if Billy gets back, I think they'll be okay. But that is going to be a challenge, at least for the next couple games for sure. Now, passing game wise, I don't know. I want to hear from you guys on this one. There wasn't too much to complain about tonight, passing game wise, right? I mean, CJ, I thought, played a very clean football game, made a couple big time throws, 13 out of 16, 218 yards, 3 touchdowns. KJ Smith had a long touchdown, 34-yard touchdown. Will Pauling wasn't used a ton, but he had a couple grabs in this game. Jordan Faison, I think, is one of the most underrated football players on this roster over the last couple years, too. I'm not even saying just now. That kid and his 4 catches for 27 yards and a touchdown is not going to, like, no one's going to look at this box score from an outsider perspective and be like, man, Jordan Faison killed them. But if you watch the game, man, Jordan Faison just makes something happen every time he has the football in his hands. I love watching that kid play. Like, that one throw, I think it was like a 3rd and 5 or something where he caught the ball and just, I think it was just like a little stick or it was a little hitch, something. I don't even know exactly what the route was. But able to make that corner miss in such tight quarters and create a explosive out of it, or at least a first down movement out of it, he is, and I agree with Toby in the chat, he is clutch. I think that's the best way to put it, man. That kid makes plays when you need him to make plays. He gets open and he makes plays. Physically, there isn't a lot about him that says, wow, right? He's 5'10", he's 182 pounds, and he's probably not the most fast wide receiver of all time. But that kid is quick, he's tough, he's got great balance, and he makes plays. And you can't quantify that all the time, right? Like, he's going to go to the combine someday when you try to make the NFL jump. And he's probably going to be a very average athlete across the board. But then you pop on the film and it's like, well, you might be average, but there's a reason that he is top 5 in college football for wide receivers in forced missed tackles this year. He just makes plays happen, man. I think that he is so important for this offense on third and shorts, third and medium. That's a guy that I know CJ is going to look to because he has got a great relationship with them, obviously. Going into the game, Jordan was your leading receiver. He had 39 catches for over 518 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he's been a guy that's been depended upon a ton. But I think that he's the quintessential chain mover. But I think that the one important thing that we saw today, Malachi Fields got involved early and often. I just wrote an article about it. It was my first post-game article that will be up at A to Z Sports. It's already out there. Talking about one of the questions I had coming into the week was, there's been slight stagnation with this offense over the last couple weeks. And one of my theories is that you haven't gotten production out of the boundary position, out of Malachi Fields over the last couple games. The last 3 games coming into this contest, he only had 4 total catches for like 81 yards and a touchdown. So he's not been used a ton the last 3 games. And I looked at that and said, when your outside boundary receiver, is not having a huge impact in a game, things get more condensed. Because what happens is that instead of safety playing too high and trying to honor that boundary receiver, maybe working vertically, maybe I'll play some more single high and I'll sneak that extra safety down into the box because I don't have to worry about him as much. Or maybe I play a little bit more outside in terms of my pass coverage, which basically means that I'm creating I'm trying to force everything back inside. And when you force everything back inside, that means that there is more hecticness and there's more traffic, which means that now guys that make plays with space, and that is Jordan Faison, that's Wolf Pauling, that's Jaden Greathouse whenever the heck he gets back. Those guys now have to deal with more traffic because everyone is just suffocating. They're pushing everything inside because they're not honoring your big boundary receiver. And that now makes for congestion. That also hurts the run game because you get that extra safety down into the box. Malachi Fields loosening this team up early for Navy, I think, was a huge thing for me because Mike Denbrock's offense really is predicated on getting that boundary receiver going. He's a very important cog into that machine. And I think you saw it, that first deep pass play, 52 yards, okay. And then you saw it a few more times. And he ends up with 4 for 97, and that includes a drop that would have got him over 100 yards for the first time in his career. And Eli Raridan, which IGK just mentioned, that's another guy a part of this conversation too, because although Eli can move around and do a lot of different things, Eli is a 6'7", 250-pound tight end who is going to operate most of the time in the middle of the field. So again, having Malachi Fields at outside presence, I think that makes every one of your inside receivers, your running backs, your tight end room, all of them are more just productive overall and have more one-on-one opportunities, have more space to work with. Having his presence in this offense, I think, was huge for Notre Dame in this game, and it needs to be huge for the rest of the season. Because one thing that's held this offense back in bigger games over the last few years, and we've talked about it a ton, or at least I've talked about it a ton, is that everything starts to feel very condensed, and every little thing, even the things that should be easy, start to feel more difficult. Why is that? Because you're dealing with more traffic. You're dealing with tighter window throws. The best way to do that is to have those outside-oriented receivers. Why boundary position is so important, because it loosens everything up. Malachi Fields being involved in this passing game, I think, was a huge thing for Notre Dame tonight and for the foreseeable future, hopefully going into the playoffs. Quick transition over to the defensive side of the football, because I have like a mixed feeling on this defense tonight. And I forget who said it. It may have been, I think it was either Steve or if it was Toby. I can't remember who said this one early. But the defense was a tale of two halves, man. For the first time this season, a Notre Dame defense had given up a 100-yard rusher, and it was the quarterback, Braxton Woodson, who had over 100 yards, and he did that in the first half. Funny enough, he ended up with 101 yards on 23 carries on the game, so he was over 100 yards. I think he had negative yardage in the second half. I need to go back and look at the splits, but negative yardage in the second half, which is pretty wild to think about. But in the first half, And Christopher Crosby just brought it up, and this is the biggest point here. A lot of missed tackles, man, especially obviously on that quarterback. That was the guy that was killing Notre Dame. And it wasn't just off of the option game. It was off of like the scramble drill where he had that huge gain. I think that was in the second quarter. He was a guy that I don't know how prepared Notre Dame was for him. You knew that Blake Horvath was at least banged up to a degree, so I'm sure that you did some deeper analysis on, some advanced scouting on Braxton Woodson, who's played a little bit in his Navy career. Obviously, he's not the starting quarterback, but he's a much different player than Blake Horvath. Blake Horvath's a little bit of a better passer. Braxton Woodson seemed, at least to me, to my eyes, a more explosive athlete. So you saw the kind of that explosiveness, more speed. Man, that kid's a talented athlete, man. Like, he really was. So Notre Dame needed to find an adjustment in the second half. And I think they did I don't want to say to a degree. They did, but I do wonder, and it's just a thought I'm throwing out there, but I made a comment at the end of the second quarter after Notre Dame got a stop. I was like, all right, another stop. They scored. It was 14-7. I'm like, get a stop, score again, and then go into the second half, making Navy have to try to throw the football because the type of game isn't, like, they don't want to play that type of game. Right? So you want to force them to be uncomfortable. And I'm curious if it was all about adjustments for Chris Ash or if it was all about, hey, they need to make something happen here, right? They can't play their same monotonous, hopefully 10 to 15 play drive per drive type of situation. Like, that's just not a world that they can live in anymore. So I'm curious if it was a combination of, hey, some adjustments, but also Navy got out of their identity and it had to be something that they're completely different and completely not. Like, it's just not what they want to be. So I really do think that that's kind of a situation we're in. And Toby said, don't think anyone was spying the quarterback to keep him contained. And no, Toby, I didn't, especially early, obviously, I didn't see a ton of spy situations. If anything, Notre Dame was playing a lot of man coverage because they were trying to blitz a little bit. Like, there was that long run that Woodson had. I believe it was Drake Bowen and it was Jalen Sneed in the game. And they were both covering crossing routes going away from it. And Blake Woodson just went to his left, like out the back door. And nobody was close to him. And no one was spying him. No one was looking at him. And I'm okay with not spying him to a degree. But anytime you're playing man coverage, you have to know against an athletic quarterback, hey, your backs are turned to him more than anything, right? And you have to be able to get to the football. That had to be an adjustment that was made to a degree. But again, it ended up being fine. I do just think that we saw a little bit of a slower start from a defensive perspective. The first couple of drives were fine, but then that third drive particularly was like just way too easy, man. Like, that was a drive that was super frustrating for Notre Dame. But they got it done in the end. I want to throw out a couple players that really impressed me in this game. Not necessarily game ball players, but guys that I was just kind of watching. I'm just like, yeah, man, they're good players. I talk about it every single week, but Kingston Viliamoasa, folks, that's what they look like, man. That's what they look like. Drake Bowen is a good linebacker. He is. Drake Bowen is a good linebacker. And I don't think he had like his best game, but like we saw Drake last week have 14 solo tackles, right? So like Drake Bowen's a good football player. He's your leading tackler for a reason. But I just think Kingston's different. I'm fine to say it. Like, I just think that kid's a different animal. Like, he is. And his stat line wasn't even crazy tonight, man. Like, 5 total tackles. He had a tackle for loss. He had a pass defense. But if you saw his tackle for loss tonight, and I think it might have just been a quarterback sweep, but either way, it was a quarterback keeper. And Alex Teska, who's their dive back, was leading him around. And KVA absolutely flattens the fullback and flattened him so much that his momentum ended up tripping up the quarterback as well. She ended up tripping up Blake Woodson. That was one of only 5 tackles for loss in the game. And man, every week, KVA has a play that just kind of makes me kind of sit back and be like, yeah, that's how they look. Like, that's a future high round draft pick, in my opinion. And you've had some good linebackers over the years. Like, I just mentioned, Drake Bowen's a good linebacker. You've had Jack Kaiser. You've had some good football players, man. J.D. Bertrand, Maris Loifau. You've had some good ones. And Maris is a little bit different because he was a little bit volatile at Notre Dame. But KVA he's just a little different, man. He's just a little different. Like 6'3", 230 plus pounds, having the physicality he has, being able to do everything he can. Like you play Mike, could play Will, could play Sam if you're playing a more traditional Sam role. He plays on the line of scrimmage at times. He blitzes. Like he's a different type of cat. But I love that. Yeah, Christopher, I agree. Madden Framo, from a physical perspective, he is the real deal as well, just from physically. Absolutely. David Romake, who is on, and David, if I pronounce your last name, I apologize. Said Jaden Osbury. I know I spelled that wrong, but he impressed me. Kingston reminded me of Jalen Smith. That's kind of like my point is, and obviously I'm not going to make that direct comparison, but Notre Dame's had some great linebackers, or some very good linebackers over the last few years. But it's been a while since they've had a guy that like looked like Jalen Smith, right? That looked like those super high rounds drafted guys. Like they've had the 4th to 5th to 6th round guys over the last few years. Maris ended up going in the 3rd round based off of upside. But man, he just very, very freaky athlete, like very talented, versatile. But I love that you mentioned Jaden Osbury. Jaden Osbury was everywhere tonight, man. I'm pretty sure he led the team in tackles. I think he had 8 total tackles. He had 2 tackles for loss. He had a sack. He had the 1 tackle on that screenplay where he was playing on the end of the line of scrimmage. He was playing outside in, and then he kind of retraced his steps and stopped the screen on that play. Tremendous play by Jaden Osbury. Like, I thought Osbury was tremendous. We saw some interesting things just defensively, like Devonta Smith was playing outside corner, which Jordan Clark played some outside corner last year against Navy. I forget, man, there was one guy that did that too. I can't remember who it was, but Notre Dame's done that before where they kind of throw a guy at outside corner that is more of a safety type, more of a physical guy, more of a nickel, a guy that can kind of tackle a little bit better potentially outside of it. Christian Gray still banged up a little bit. I think that seeing Devonta Smith out there, and he did a pretty good job. I mean, he had that one pass breakup against Eli Heidenreich where, I mean, Eli Heidenreich is a good player. I don't think it was Tariq Bracy, Christopher. I could be wrong about that, but like I don't think they ever threw him at outside corner against Navy. I could be wrong. I'll go back and look, but either way, I thought the adjustment was sound and it was good and it made a lot of sense. And you didn't give up anything in the passing game. Again, they completed 3 of 10 passes for 22 yards. One of those passes was dropped by Eli Heidenreich, but even if you would have caught that one, that was like a 8-yard out, 10-yard out, like somewhere in that ballpark. So like no explosives given up. Usually every Navy game or every Army game, there's at least one just waggle or something, a play action play where they get like a chunk gain. And Notre Dame did not give up any chunk games. So they seemed very disciplined on the back ends. I think it helps now. This is his 2nd year for Don Schuler starting. But Tay Johnson, I thought, made a couple really nice plays in this game. He had one stick where he was working alley, and he came to bounce and delivered a blow. And I haven't seen the all 22 on this game, obviously, with it just ending yet. But 22 yards, 3 completions, that tells me that the safeties were probably in the right spot more often than not. Like they weren't able to let you throw it over the top, which was good. The corners seemed to be in good position. Leonard Moore and Devonta Smith had most of the reps, obviously, there. We saw Mark Zachary a little bit in this football game as well. So I really do think that the defense played mostly a good game. Got off to a slow start. I think adjustments were made, but more than anything, you started being better on early downs. When you get this team into 3rd and 10s, 3rd and 12s, even 3rd and 8s, or 2nd and 8s, excuse me, that's not where they want to live. Like they want to live in 2nd and 4. They want to live in 3rd and 2. That's what Navy wants to live in. And you force them to be uncomfortable in this game, and that helped you especially in the second half. So KVA wanted to shout out. Jaden Osbury wanted to shout out. Jeremiah Love always want to shout out. Jordan Faison wanted to shout out. CJ Carr had a really good game tonight. Was a lot of good in this game. But you now have 3 games where you have to be perfect. And perfect is never accomplished on the field, but perfect is accomplished on that win-loss record, right? So finish out 3-0, and you will be in the college football playoffs because there's going to be some chaos on the horizon. It is a guarantee. We almost saw a couple upsets today. Penn State nearly upsetted Indiana. We had Iowa that took Oregon down to the wire, and Oregon had to get a game-winning field goal down the stretch as well. So there is a lot of chaos that is on the horizon. I did not expect. I expected Iowa to keep it closer with Oregon for a while, but I did expect Oregon to pull away a little bit. I thought Indiana would play with its food a little bit against Penn State, but I thought they would end up killing Penn State. But as we've seen, outside of maybe Ohio State right now, man, there's there are some flawed teams up top. Like, there are some flawed teams. Indiana is beatable, man. I'm telling you right now, if Notre Dame gets Indiana in the playoffs, could Indiana beat Notre Dame? Possible. But Notre Dame can absolutely beat Indiana if they have a good game. Absolutely. They can beat Georgia if they have a good game. Notre Dame can be a dangerous team, but they have to peak at the right time. Offensive line needs to get better, get healthy as possible. They need to get better. This team needs to be better situationally. Some of these young guys need to grow up a little bit. But Notre Dame can be a dangerous team if they make the playoffs because, as we've seen, there is a lot of flawed football teams in college football this year. So win the last three. Let's see what happens. Folks, before you get out of here, again, hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're live with me on Facebook, hit that like button. Share the podcast to your feed. But also make sure that you are following the A to Z Sports Notre Dame channel there. Follow me on Twitter. Appreciate y'all. But go over to YouTube. Make sure to hit that like button and do all that spiel I just talked about there. We'll talk next week. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your weekend. Great week. And as always, go Irish.